It started like most bizarre jobs with a fax. Not an email, not a text, a fax. Tony ripped it out of the van's dusty machine with a grunt that shook a nearby recycling bin. "Jesse," he said, "we got something weird." Jesse didn't answer at first. He was deep in his sacred pre-clean hair ritual. His arms moved like Tai Chi instructors possessed by hairdressers. One hand misted a fine rosemary lavender spray. The other gently brushed his perfect wave using a gold-plated detangler carved from the shin bone of an extinct fashion elk. He was surrounded by mirrors, a folding 3-panel vanity, 2 magnetic mini-mirrors stuck to the van doors, and a small one he called Lil Reflection that hovered beside him on a motorized gimbal. "Talk slow," Jesse said. "I'm entering follicular nirvana." Tony cleared his throat and read, "Emergency cleaning. Moldova County Fairgrounds, mirror maze containment breach, bring gloves, and maybe a priest." Jesse froze. His pupils dilated slightly. He turned to the nearest mirror and whispered, "You hearin' this, Lil R?" Lil's reflection nodded. Tony flexed. A moth 2 blocks away fell out of the air. They were ready. Arrival at the Moldova Fairgrounds. The sky was the color of microwave lasagna. The fairgrounds were abandoned, except for one sobbing man in a tuxedo vest hiding in a cotton candy barrel, a tilt-a-whirl that kept spinning, even though no one touched it, a corn dog that seemed sentient. Tony stared down the entrance to the mirror maze. It pulsed like a wounded squid. "Haunted," Jesse said, adjusting his shades. They stepped inside. The maze of madness. Instantly, the air shifted. The mirrors weren't just dirty, they were angry. Each pane whispered insecurities like a judgmental ant at a family BBQ. Tony saw his reflection eating a sad salad. Jesse saw a version of himself using 2-in-1 shampoo. They both shuddered. Then came the mirror men, twisted doppelgangers with exaggerated flaws. One Jesse had flat hair and wore Crocs. One Tony had noodle arms and couldn't open a pickle jar. "No," Jesse whispered. "Not on my watch." Tony cracked his neck so hard, a nearby mirror shattered from fear. The brawl began. The fight, flex, and follicles. Tony went full berserker. He ripped a mirror off the wall and deadlifted it into submission. When a mirror man called him mid, Tony replied by flexing his deltoids until they formed the shape of a bald eagle. Jesse summoned the Mirror Sync Army trademark, reflections of himself from his most fabulous days, Jesse at his prom, Jesse at his cousin's wedding, Jesse at that one music festival where people cried when he removed his headband. He armed them with combs and aromatherapy grenades. "Operation Frizzlock is a go," Jesse whispered. At one point, a giant disco ball with legs, nicknamed Mirror Daddy, dropped from the ceiling and tried to floss them into submission. Tony kicked it into orbit. Then Jesse pulled out his ultimate weapon, the velvet comb of legacy, a family heirloom passed down from his great-grand-uncle Vito Silky Hands Mendoza. He used it to unleash his secret attack, the spiral snap and shine trademark. The mirror maze screamed, and then silence. The final reflection room. In the heart of the maze stood a single enormous mirror, labeled in calligraphy, "The True You." It didn't show them. It showed their worst fears. Tony, an out-of-shape gym coach handing out dodgeballs to disrespectful teens. Jesse, balding, using a plastic comb, talking about how he used to be cool. They stared in silence. Tony's biceps deflated a little. Jesse saw a glint of silver near his temple. He touched the mirror. "I maintain because I must," Jesse said. "I lift so I don't drift," Tony growled. They high-fived in slow motion, then suplexed the mirror into the earth with a combo move known only as the muscle curl and curl muscle. Boom! The maze imploded in a puff of glitter, shame, and faint notes of lemon-scented regret. Back at the van, Tony did push-ups using the bumper as resistance. Jesse sat on the roof, letting the wind blow through his hair while misting it every 30 seconds with Glacial Essence trademark. The man from the cotton candy barrel approached, nervously. You saved the maze," he stammered. "Can I offer you a turkey leg?" Tony took it, sniffed it, ate it whole. Jesse offered him a cleansing towelette. They nodded in mutual respect. Then the van phone rang. Tony grabbed it, flexed unconsciously, and handed it to Jesse. "Flexin' fresh," Jesse said smoothly. "You spill it, we kill it." His eyebrow raised, then he grinned. "Tony, there's a house made entirely of cursed fondue in Vermont." Tony cracked his knuckles. Jesse smoothed a rebellious strand of hair back into place, and as they got into the van, Jesse turned to the mirror, flashed a wink, and said, "Stay silky, baby." The suds that whisper. It started like every other Thursday. Tony was deadlifting an old dryer he found behind a bowling alley. Jesse was sitting on a folding chair in an empty parking space, sipping a green juice and reading the ingredients on his new herbal detangler out loud like it was poetry. Then the call came in. Jesse answered, still reading the bottle. "You got grime? We got time." The voice on the other end was hoarse. "It's my laundromat in Windy Pines. Something's wrong with the suds. They talk when the machines spin. Customers are hearing secrets. Their own secrets." Tony raised an eyebrow. Jesse closed the cap on his detangler slowly. "Soap that knows your business," he muttered. "That's dark magic and gossip combined." Windy Pines was the kind of town where everyone knew each other and hated knowing each other. The laundromat was at the corner of Forgettable and Uncanny, right next to a nail salon that never had customers and a deli that only sold boiled cucumbers. Inside, it looked like a normal place. Old machines, peeling linoleum, a soft scent of fabric softener and despair. But something was wrong. Tony stood still. "You feel that?" Jesse sniffed the air. Shame. A woman sprinted out of a washing machine stall, screaming, "I never paid my parking tickets!" before bursting into tears and knocking over a detergent display. The owner waved them over, trembling. "I installed new, smart soap dispensers last month. Ever since, the suds have been whispering." Tony looked at Jesse. Jesse was already tying a silk bandana around his forehead. Time to clean. They approached machine number 7, the worst offender. The display blinked, load, rinse, reveal. Jesse dropped in a small hand towel, hit start. The drum spun, bubbles formed. Then, voices. "You told Mark you were at Pilates. You were not at Pilates. You said you liked that gift. You returned it instantly. You still think about the 3rd grade talent show." Tony leaned in. "This soap's snitching in Dolby Surround." The drum vibrated violently. Suds overflowed and began crawling out of the machine like soap spiders. Tony yelled, "It's sentient suds!" Jesse's hair reacted first, flaring out like a majestic lion under a heat lamp. He flipped backwards onto the folding table and pulled out a mop soaked in clarity oil. Tony reached into his duffel and yanked out the spin cycle hammer trademark, forged from dryer lint and sacred pipe metal. "Let's do laundry," he said, and waded into the foam. The suds were alive. They climbed walls. They whispered guilt. They showed visions in their shimmer. Tony was grabbed by a foam tentacle. "You skipped leg day in 2012, it hissed. Tony roared and bench-pressed the whole washing machine off its hinges. Across the room, Jesse battled with elegance, dodging guilt bubbles and blasting detangler mist like holy water. He muttered rhymes under his breath to stay focused. Truth in the bubbles, lies in the spin. But my edges stay tight and my soul stays thin. One final wave surged. An enormous blob of soap, shaped like a therapist and glowing slightly, rose from the center machine. I am the stain within. Tony was knocked back. Jesse stood alone, his sunglasses cracked, his pompadour slightly deflated. He clutched his comb and stepped forward. You want to air our dirty laundry? Let's go. Final wrap mode activated. You call yourself Truth, but you're just a mess, stirring up shame in a laundromat dress. I don't fear wrinkles, I don't fear age. My shine comes deeper than a fashion page. You whisper secrets, I blast clarity. Styled in peace, not in parody. I'm silk, I'm smooth, I rinse with grace. Now watch me clean this haunted place. With that, Jesse tossed in a truth capsule, a bottle of concentrated lavender justice. It detonated in a soft explosion of forgiveness and glitter. The suds collapsed. The laundromat lights flickered, then held steady. It was over. Back at the van, Jesse reapplied product with the gentleness of a painter restoring a masterpiece. Tony stared at his reflection in the side mirror. You ever think about how many messes we've seen? Jesse replied without looking. Only when the conditioner sits too long. The phone rang again. Jesse answered. Flex and fresh. Your mess, our mission. He paused, then raised an eyebrow. Tony, there's a retirement village where the bingo balls keep spelling curses. Tony opened a new protein bar and said, Time to roll out. They climbed into the van. Jesse gave one last look to the cracked mirror in his hand. Smiled. Stay silky, baby. It started like every other Tuesday. Tony was deadlifting the van, not in the van, not on the van itself. Just him, a steel chin strap, and a headband made of braided mop strings. Jesse stood nearby, mirror in one hand, diamond-crusted spray bottle in the other. His pompadour shimmered like a galaxy made of coconut oil. He was whispering a rap under his breath, sharpening lines like razors. I'd clean the grime that time forgot. Sparkle from the sink to the parking lot. Then the phone rang. Tony dropped the van gently like a newborn llama. Jesse answered the phone like it owed him rent. You got grime? We got time. The voice on the other end shook. It's Unit 12B. The toilet sings. It screams, Jesse. I heard it whisper my ex-husband's nickname. Tony grunted. Ain't no porcelain crooner scaring civilians on our watch. Jesse nodded. Let's silence that siren. They arrived at the retirement home in slow motion, Tony with a mop slung across his back like a war axe, Jesse strutting beside him like a disco-fueled exorcist. A confused elderly man dropped his spoon as they passed. Inside, a resident whispered, Are those the Bleach Boys? They knocked on the door. It creaked open with jazz hands. And then came the sound. From the bathroom. A deep, echoing rendition of I Will Always Love You, but in reverse. Tony stormed into the bathroom, muscles bulging like bread dough left in the sun. The toilet hissed. Jesse stepped in behind him, unsheathing his dual spray bottles, one peppermint, one vengeance. He rapped softly, This ain't no porcelain prom night. We bring dawn to your long night. And then the toilet lunged. Yes, lunged. The seat snapped open, revealing teeth made of floss picks. Tony tackled it. They rolled. Tiles cracked. Granny photos fell off the wall. Jesse sprayed holy water through a disco diffuser. Shh! Let me talk to it. The toilet gurgled in Latin. Tony screamed, Get plunged! And powerbombed it into the tub. Behind the mirror cabinet, they found a tunnel. Warm, wet. It pulsed with memories. Jesse paused, running fingers through his hair. Still perfect. Tony, he said. "This isn't demonic plumbing. This is heartbreak with a water bill." They found the original toilet, humming softly. Heartbroken, glazed with soap residue and longing. Jesse reached out. He rapped again, this time from the soul. "You were left behind in tile and glue, but love don't flush. Nah, it sticks like you." Tony flexed his pecs in time with the beat. The toilet began to glow, and then it spoke. "Thank you for hearing me." It flushed itself into the light. Back at the van, Tony stood shirtless in the sun, flexing so hard the wind clapped. Jesse leaned in the mirror doing a final hair check, but then Tony dropped to one knee. "Jesse," he whispered, "I think I pulled something. My flex. It's fading." Jesse lowered his sunglasses. "Don't say that, brother." Tony looked down at his arm. It was still massive, but it trembled. Jesse placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we double down. You train the muscle. I'll perfect the shine. Together?" Tony looked up, a tear forming beneath his battle bandana. "Together?" Suddenly, the van's radio burst to life. Crackle, static, then, "Yo, Jesse." The voice was his, but deeper. From the future? From the mirror realm? "You're doing good, bro. Don't let the weirdness shake you. Even if your conditioner runs out, the style lives on." Then softly, "Stay silky, baby." Jesse blinked, nodded, then smiled. "You heard him, Tony. Let's ride." Tony stood, raised both mop buckets over his head, and shouted, "Flex forgiveness!" Jesse kicked open the van door, sprayed himself in the face with glitter mist, and dropped the final verse. "No grime too tough, no soul too twisted. If life's the mess, then we stay enlisted. You call the rest when you're feeling lazy. You call flex and fresh when the world gets crazy." Cue slow-motion fist bump. Cue van peeling off into a double rainbow. Cue theme music made entirely of bass drops, window cleaner sprays, and heavenly choirs. Stay silky, baby. Flex and Fresh, the talent show incident, a Jesse origin story. It started, as most good tragedies do, with glitter glue and heartbreak. 3rd grade. Lake Swans Elementary. The gym was packed, parents fanning themselves with laminated programs, teachers pretending to care, one kid in a cardboard box claiming to be the spirit of recycling. And backstage, young Jesse, 9 years old. Hair already too good for his age bracket. Slicked to perfection, with a part so clean it looked surgically installed. He wore a hand-sequined vest, gold high tops, and a homemade nameplate necklace that said J-Style. He was nervous. His act? Freestyle interpretive rap dance about self-care. But there was a problem, a big one. His nemesis. Devin Merkel, a kid with 2 first names, 0 talent, and a unibrow that looked like it bench-pressed. Devin had bribed the AV kid to sabotage Jesse's music. And so, when Jesse stepped into the spotlight, mic in hand, prepared to unleash his beat about moisture retention and inner beauty, nothing played. Silence. A cough. Someone's dad sneezed so hard it echoed. Jesse froze. A bead of sweat slid down his temple, but his hair did not move. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Devin cackled in the wings, already loading up his kazoo solo. And then Jesse stepped forward. No beat, no backup, just bars. "They tried to break my flow, but I'm breaking free. Hydration in my soul and silk in my pedigree. I don't need a track, I got style for days. My conditioner's rich and my rhymes set ablaze." Gasps, whispers. Someone spilled their Capri Sun. He kept going, freestyling harder than any 3rd grader should. "You brought sabotage? I brought leave-in spray. You brought hate. I brought edge lay. I comb out drama and brush off doubt. When Jesse's on the mic, Bad vibes rinse out. The crowd stood up. Standing ovation. One teacher wept into her clipboard. Even Devin Merkel dropped his kazoo. Jesse took a bow, but as he turned to exit, he caught sight of himself in a mirror backstage and noticed, for the first time ever, the tiniest cowlick out of place. No one else saw it, but Jesse did, and from that day forward he vowed, "I will never be unready again." Present day, the memory returns. In the back of the Flex and Fresh van, Jesse stared into a cracked, compact mirror. Tony looked over. "You okay?" Jesse didn't answer right away. Finally, he whispered, "It started at Lake Swans." Tony blinked. "The Duck Pond School?" "Talent show, sabotage, public redemption." He adjusted his collar. "But also, the first time I realized being on point wasn't a choice, it was a duty." Tony nodded solemnly. "I once lost an arm wrestle to my cousin and trained for 7 years on a mountain. I get it." They sat in silence for a moment. Then the phone rang. Jesse exhaled slowly, answered it. "Flex and Fresh, you mess it, we bless it." He listened, then said, "Tony, we've got a flooded yoga studio haunted by the ghost of a bootleg Lululemon instructor." Tony cracked his knuckles. Jesse touched his hair and smiled. "Stay silky, baby." It began with a hum. Not a song, not quite. It slithered through the air vents of Bellevue Tower late one Wednesday night, somewhere between floors 13 and 14, the floor that technically didn't exist. The tower was supposed to be empty after 9 p.m., but that's when Tony and Jesse clocked in, armed with bleach, brawn, and brilliance. Tony, the janitor built like a hydraulic press, was busy lifting a floor buffer with one arm while bench pressing a vending machine with the other. Jesse stood nearby, polishing a marble banister using a cloth woven from nanofibers and spider silk. His hair, an architectural marvel, defied gravity, time, and physics, floating gently with its own personal wind that followed him everywhere. Every strand was calculated, intentional, godlike. That's when the hum turned into something worse. From the vent above, a low whisper drifted down in rhythmic syllables. "Your mop can't stop me. Your buff can't block me. I'm the shadow in the speaker, the thief in the lobby." Jesse's comb stopped mid-stroke. "Tony," he said, voice low. "He's here." Tony blinked. "Who's he?" Jesse turned slowly, his hair catching a glint of fluorescent light like polished obsidian. "Marshall, but he's changed." Tony cracked his knuckles. "Like Eminem?" "No," Jesse said. "Not anymore." They both turned as the lights began to flicker. The elevator dinged even though no button had been pressed. A foul wind poured out of the shaft, carrying the stench of burnt CDs, bootleg merchandise, and failed mixtapes. And then they saw him. Or it. What stepped out of the elevator looked like Eminem if he'd been trapped in a demonic garage band for 50 years. His hoodie billowed like smoke. His eyes spun like scratched vinyl. His arms were covered in hair, not his, but taken from others. Braids, ponytails, dreadlocks, even toupees. He wore them like trophies, and he was staring directly at Jesse. "Yo, Jesse, been a long time. That pompadour? It's mine." Jesse took a step back. His hair puffed defensively, shimmering with divine geometry. Tony stepped between them, his muscles flexing so hard the floor cracked. "You ain't touching a follicle, Slim." Eminem's mouth curled into something between a grin and a beat drop. His voice cracked the air like a bass line. "Strong arms, big chest, but you can't stop this hair theft. One beat, one verse. Gonna make your brains disperse." The walls began to melt into lyrics. Letters crawled up the ceiling like spiders. Every surface began vibrating with invisible bass. Tony lunged. Eminem didn't dodge. He just rapped. Try to swing, but I sting. My flow bends everything. Tony's punch hit air. The moment slowed. The rhyme rewound the punch, then played it back in reverse, slamming Tony into the wall with a beat so heavy the windows cracked. Jesse ran, not because he was afraid, but because he was calculating. He knew this wasn't a battle of fists or facts. This was metaphysical. Eminem had become something far beyond human. He had consumed too many unreleased verses, too many haunted lyrics. His soul had fused with an ancient mixtape forged in a Detroit record store basement. He was now the hair collector, a being who devoured style, confidence, and charisma through rhyme. And he wanted Jesse's hair, not because it was stylish, because it was alive. Jesse burst into the utility wing. He scanned a mop across a retina sensor. A hidden door opened, revealing the vault of eternal cleanliness, a room so sterile it erased bad fashion choices just by standing in it. Inside, floating in a jar of mineral-infused vapor, was the final strand. Jesse's secret, the source of his brilliance, the origin of the hair. He had extracted it years ago to protect the world. It was said that if anyone other than Jesse touched it, they would gain power beyond comprehension and immediately lose their soul to split ends. But it was too late. The hoodie reappeared, sliding out of the shadows. Eminem was already in the room. So this is it, huh? The final line. Give it to me, I'll make it rhyme. Jesse stood his ground. You take this strand, and you become something far worse than a monster. Slim Gravy smiled. Exactly what I'm going for. Suddenly, boom. Tony burst through the wall like a demolition truck made of muscle and rage. He held a mop in each hand and a vacuum strapped to his back like a jetpack. You want a battle? Tony roared. Let's rap rocket. Eminem snarled and lunged. The three of them collided. The room shook. The final strand hovered above them like a glowing comet, untouched. Jesse grabbed it. Eminem's scream shattered the mirrors. Jesse twisted the strand, whispered a word only known to the most elite hairstylists of Atlantis, and launched it into the air. The strand expanded. It became a net of infinite follicles, snaring Eminem mid-rhyme, silencing his flow. He thrashed and screamed, but the net only tightened, absorbing every stolen haircut and foul lyric he'd hoarded over the years. In one last burst of static, Eminem vanished, trapped in the follicular realm. A single beat echoed and then died. Silence returned. The vault was intact. Tony dusted off his shoulders. I hate rap battles. Jesse placed the strand back in its jar. He'll try again. Mixtapes never die. They just get remastered. Tony nodded solemnly. Next time he brings backup, I'm throwing a conditioner grenade. They walked away from the vault as the lights flickered back to normal. The building exhaled. Outside, the wind rustled Jesse's hair. It shimmered, victorious and untouched. But deep below, in an old cassette buried in the boiler room, a beat began again. The call came in just after sunset. Tony was outside doing push-ups on a yoga ball made of solid oak. Jesse was applying essential oils to his eyebrows. The message? Madame Vellum's Wax Museum. Mannequins won't stay put. Bring bleach and hairspray. Jesse raised an eyebrow. A wax museum? Haunted mannequins? That's not scary. Tony nodded solemnly. Until the wax starts melting uphill. They loaded the van. A 1,000-watt boombox. 2 canisters of citrus exorcism mist. Jesse's emergency hair comb. Tony's backup mop, named Brenda. Then they drove. Into the dark. Madame Vellum's stood at the edge of town like a forgotten promise. Tall, crooked, and lit from within by a sickly yellow glow. Inside, rows of perfectly preserved wax figures. Politicians, pop stars, A few that looked suspiciously like Jesse, but wrong. Office. Do not separate, Tony muttered as they entered. The door slammed behind them. The lights flickered. A wax butler bowed deeply and whispered, "They remember being touched." Jesse sprayed him in the face with detangler and walked on. In the Hall of Legends, things got weirder. One wax figure, an Elvis, blinked. Another, Abraham Lincoln, breathed. Tony smashed Honest Abe with a mop handle. "You weren't that tall in real life," he muttered. Suddenly, the wax Michael Jackson moonwalked off his pedestal and said, "You can't clean what's immortal, boys," Jesse snapped. He dropped the mop. He dropped the beat. "I don't care if you moonwalk, wax clone freak. I'll clean this floor while your knees go weak. My moose is holy, my fade is divine. You melt under pressure. I wax poetic with shine." Michael combusted. A dozen other figures began to melt in reverse, rebuilding into monstrous versions of themselves. Then the walls spoke. A voice, cold, elegant. "Who dares scrub Madame Vellum's legacy?" From the center of the museum descended Madame Vellum herself, half woman, half candle, draped in cobwebs and formaldehyde. Her head was a melting masterpiece. Her eyebrows were drawn on with ancient mascara. She pointed at Jesse. "You, pretty boy, your hair threatens my reign." Jesse gasped. "You jealous wax demon!" She screamed. "I was the first to style." The mannequins lunged. Tony exploded into action, flexing so hard the air popped. Every bicep ripple launched a cleaning product. Bottles of cursed Febreze soared through the air like missiles. Jesse pulled out the comb, the sacred one, solid platinum, forged in the fires of a high-end salon. "Time to trim the excess," he said. He leapt into the air, spinning, and unleashed the hurricane, a tornado of wrap, product, and mirror shards. "I'm the cut that ends the curse, the shampoo god with a cleansing verse. You're 80% wax, 20% fear. Now melt away when the stylist's near." Madame Vellum shrieked and melted upward, screaming about bangs and broken dreams. The wax crumbled, the mannequins collapsed. The museum fell silent, clean. In the parking lot, Tony wiped sweat off with a torn curtain. Jesse, sunglasses now glowing faintly from holy conditioner, whispered, "Tony, was my hair okay?" Tony gave him a nod. "Bro, your fade scared a ghost." The phone buzzed again. Next job, a cursed theme park. No working rides, only clowns that remember too much. Jesse slid his comb back into his holster. "I've always hated clowns." Tony cracked his knuckles. "Time to make the funhouse cry." They drove off into the night, boombox still playing. The wind blew just right. Their hair? Flawless. It was a perfect day for junk food and ego inflation. Tony and Jesse were parked outside their favorite McDonald's, basking in the glow of golden arches and sodium-induced bliss. Tony was bench-pressing the picnic table, again, while Jesse leaned back on the hood of the Flex and Fresh van, holding his fries like they were sacred scrolls of grease. "Tony," Jesse said between sips of Coke, "be honest. Is the pompadour too reflective today? I caught a bird mid-flight getting stunned by the shine." Tony didn't answer. Instead, he grunted, dropped the table with a thud, and stood up. "We need to talk," he said, arms crossed, biceps flexing so hard the nearby soda machine started vibrating. Jesse sat up, eyes wide behind his heart-shaped gold-rimmed sunglasses. "Talk like we're about to mop a poltergeist?" Jesse asked, voice suddenly small. Tony shook his head. "Talk like, I think I need to start cleaning solo." A fry dropped from Jesse's hand in slow motion. What? I mean..." Tony looked away, jaw clenched. "You're too flashy, too loud, too much conditioner. I work better alone." Jesse stood. His hair trembled. "But we're Flex and Fresh." Tony turned and walked away. Not anymore. 1 week later. Jesse was a mess, not even a stylish mess, a regular mess. He was living in the van, eating lukewarm McNuggets, trying to polish his sunglasses with tears. The pompadour, lopsided. His outfits, just silver sweatpants and a robe. He tried cleaning solo. Once. The mop tangled in his shoelaces and he fell into a haunted toilet. He tried rapping, forgot the lyrics, and rhymed ghost with ghost again. Everywhere he looked, he saw Tony's reflection, in a mirror, in a puddle, in the muscles of passing bodybuilders. "I miss him," Jesse whispered to a spray bottle. "I miss us." Meanwhile, Tony was in a secret garage, eyes squinting under welding goggles, surrounded by rainbow smoke, glittery industrial foam, and glowing cleaning fluids. His arms were covered in soot. His tank top now read, "Buff but sentimental." He turned to a table lined with custom-made bottles. Pompadour Purifier for hair with purpose. Sassy Surface Suds, trademark, with confidence-infused bubbles. Stay Silky Disinfectant Mist, Lemon Velvet Edition. Each bottle glowed softly, each label hand-designed. The logo? 2 silhouettes, one flexing, one flipping his hair. Tony smiled. Back at McDonald's. Jesse sat on the hood of the van, sighing into a soggy apple pie, when suddenly, boom! The van door exploded open and Tony stepped out, shirtless, muscles glistening like a thunderstorm of beef and hope. What? What are you doing here? I thought you didn't want... Tony tossed a duffel bag at Jesse's feet. Jesse opened it. The bottles shimmered. His eyes filled with tears. You didn't leave me? Tony grinned. I had to make the perfect set. Couldn't let you see it before it was ready. I needed the label on the Pompadour Purifier to sparkle right. Jesse screamed and tackled Tony, tears flying from his eyes, gluing themselves to his cheeks like rhinestones. You emotionally manipulated me. I know. I almost cut my own bangs. Tony held him close. I'd never clean without you. You're the fresh to my flex. They loaded the bottles into the van. Jesse twirled one like a pistol, hair bouncing with renewed life. He kissed each label and applied mist to his face like it was cologne. You know what this calls for? He said. Tony nodded. Double quarter pounders? No. Jesse turned to him, shades now glistening with happy smudges. It's time to clean something, violently. That night, they took on a haunted laundromat possessed by a demonic fabric softener. They danced through suds and rapped at cursed socks. Tony bench-pressed an entire washer. Jesse slid across tiles, spraying his custom bottles while yelling, Pine fresh, baby! The ghost of an angry towel folded itself in surrender. And as they walked back to the van, Jesse, glowing, giggling, hair divine, looked at Tony and whispered, Carry me, I'm too silky to walk. Tony chuckled, scooped him up like a glamour baby, and marched back to the van. Jesse rested his head on Tony's massive shoulder, eyes fluttering shut. In a soft, sleepy voice, he whispered, Stay silky, baby. There wasn't a mess in the world they couldn't clean. But this one felt different. Tony stood in the driveway, massive arms crossed, mop slung over his shoulder like a battle axe. His muscle shirt read bleach mode, veins like extension cords wrapped around his forearms, throbbing with anticipation. Jesse, dressed in shimmering gold overalls and spotless high tops, stood beside him, gazing at the house in front of them, an old manor that leaned like it regretted standing. Its windows were dark, even at noon, and the mailbox was dripping something green, possibly sentient. This place smells like if mildew had a nightmare, Jesse muttered, pulling a mini comb from his chest pocket and giving his hair a single perfect flick. His pompadour shimmered. Which means... He threw his sunglasses on dramatically. We're in the right place. The door creaked open without a touch. Tony sniffed the air. Rot, ghosts, and something else. Bad energy, Jesse said, stepping inside, and maybe expired cologne. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the floor groaned. Dust lifted itself like it was stretching after a nap. A distant hum filled the walls, like humming, but off-key and angry. They were barely 5 steps in when the walls started to bleed. Not blood, hair gel, sticky glowing blue dripping down old floral wallpaper. Jesse froze, his pupils dilated. He screamed, "Tony, this house is trying to ruin my hair." A door slammed upstairs. A whisper echoed through the hall. "You'll never be clean." Tony grunted and cracked his neck. "We'll see about that." They split up, Tony charging into the kitchen like a linebacker with a mop, Jesse pirouetting into the living room, singing a soft melody to his reflection in a dusty mirror. He knelt before a haunted ottoman and began scrubbing violently while beatboxing to himself, swiping in rhythm. Then it happened. The grime shimmered, pulsed, and hissed. A filth beast emerged from beneath the rug, all teeth and old cereal. Jesse gasped, looked down at his perfectly clean sneakers, looked up at the creature, and then he just started rapping. "You call this cursed? I call it sad. Your mold's got rhythm, but your grime's gone bad. I'm the mop magician, the bleach baller supreme. Wipe your curse off the floor like I clean up a scheme." With every bar, his hair glowed brighter. With every rhyme, the creature shrank, screeching, until it vanished into a pile of loose screws and expired coupons. Tony reappeared in the doorway, covered in ghost gravy and holding half a blender. He blinked at Jesse, who was already reapplying mousse with military precision. "You wrapped it to death again?" Jesse turned slowly. "Tony, my hair speaks truth and hygiene." The kitchen had flooded itself with hot coffee. The toaster tried to bite Tony. He crushed it in one hand and screamed, "Not today, bagels!" In the upstairs bathroom, the tub gurgled in Latin. Tony punched the drain until it burped up a haunted goldfish and collapsed. The house shook. From the attic, a laugh echoed, slow, wet, raspy. Then, footsteps. Then, something began descending the stairs. A figure, tall, dripping in sludge, wearing a tattered maid's uniform from the 1940s, hovered just above the steps. Its eyes were replaced with spinning scrub brushes. Its voice was 1,000 Swiffers grinding together. "I was once the best cleaner in the world," it croaked. "But the mess, it changed me." Tony stepped forward. "Lady, I respect your hustle, but this house is under new management." Jesse, unbothered, had found a full-length mirror in the hall. He was flossing, not his teeth, his shoulders, and rapping again. "Yo, ghosts of grime and haunted grease. Your cleaning contract's now deceased. My style's sharp like glassy tile. I sweep the dead with flair and smile." The ghost shrieked and hurled bleach capsules like grenades. Tony caught them mid-air and chomped one. "Lemon-scented," he grunted, flexing so hard the walls flinched. The ghost charged. Tony tackled it. They crashed through the pantry door, grappling in a swirl of biceps and Brillo pads. Jesse strutted forward, flicked his comb once more, then held it in front of him like a wand. "You should have stayed in the cleaning aisle, ghost girl." With one final rap verse and a spritz of leave-in conditioner, Jesse unleashed the Cleanse Quake trademark, a shockwave of purity so intense that every dust mite in a 5-block radius disintegrated from guilt. The ghost imploded. The house let out a long, sad sigh. Silence. And then, sunlight. They stood there, panting. Jesse's hair? Perfect. Tony's shirt? Gone, but his abs gleamed like polished marble. Another house, Jesse said, brushing dirt from his sleeve. Deep cleaned, spiritually and otherwise. Tony nodded. We're unstoppable. Their phone buzzed. New job, haunted mansion, possessed roller rink. Who cared? Let's go, Jesse, Tony said, already walking. But Jesse lingered one more second. He looked at his reflection in the mirror again, gave it a wink, then whispered, "Stay silky, baby," and vanished out the door. Flex and Fresh, how the clean team began. It all began at a cursed truck stop just off Route 66, the kind of place where the vending machine sold beef jerky, tarot cards, and emergency sage bundles. The bathroom had been locked for 3 days. Lights kept flickering. Strange smells leaked through the vents. And at night, someone swore they heard the toilets whispering. That's when Tony showed up. He walked in like a blunt force blessing, built like a brick wall, arms like coiled rope, a mop slung over his shoulder like it owed him money. His tank top read, "Bleach Mode," and he had the no-nonsense scowl of a man who once fought a demon in a Costco and walked out with clean socks. Tony kicked open the bathroom door and took one breath before muttering, "Yup, that's a Class 4 mildew wraith." The walls pulsed, the urinals hissed, the mirror was weeping. Tony cracked his neck and reached into his duffel for holy degreaser. Then, the door creaked open again. A silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit like a shampoo commercial shot during the apocalypse. Jesse stepped in, skinny, nervous, glitter on his collar. But most of all, the hair, cascading, shimmering, and immaculate. Every strand sat in perfect alignment, like it had signed a union contract. It bounced as he moved. It glistened in the bathroom's hellish lighting. Not a single curl dared go rogue. He clutched a duffel bag full of color-coded spray bottles and whispered, "Hi, are you Tony?" "I'm Jesse." I answered the ad. "You said you needed help cleaning cursed bathrooms?" Tony turned slowly, clocked the gold-trimmed boots, the lavender aura spray, and the hair. Oh, the hair. And squinted. "You got experience?" Jesse swallowed hard. I cleaned the exorcism lab at beauty school once, and I disinfected my cousin's haunted flat iron. I'm not, strong, or brave, or good at loud noises, but I brought my own products." He held up a bottle labeled Spirifresh, Lemon Zest Exorcism Tonic. It sparkled, like his cuticles. Tony stared. The urinal behind him made a growling noise. Then, without warning, the mirror cracked open, and from it burst a 12-foot sludge wraith. Moldy, muscular, and furious, its eyes 2 glowing spores, and its breath a mix of mildew and regret. Jesse screamed. His hair didn't even frizz. Tony didn't blink. He tossed Jesse a ruined toilet brush. "If you're going to scream, scream while swinging." Jesse caught the brush awkwardly, terrified, but then glanced at his reflection in a shard of mirror. Hair? Still perfect. He stood a little taller. What followed was chaos. The wraith hurled plumbing fixtures like frisbees. Jesse dodged one, slipped, spun, and accidentally sprayed the creature dead in the eyes with Spirifresh. It sizzled like steak on a skillet. Tony leapt in and finished it off with a mighty mop swing, shouting, "Back to the drain, you funky freak!" With one final shriek, the wraith vanished in a puff of green mist and bleach vapor. Silence. Then the bathroom sparkled, like it had just passed an interdimensional health inspection. Jesse sat on the floor, panting. "Did we win?" Tony looked down at him, then, more importantly, at the hair. Still flawless, still bouncing. Tony nodded. "You've got good instincts and elite follicle discipline." Jesse blinked. "So, I'm hired?" Tony hesitated, then said, "Show up tomorrow. 7 sharp, wear gloves, and don't ever cut that hair." 2 days later, the van was repainted. Black, gold trim, and a logo across the side in shining letters. Flex and fresh. No stain too strange, no curl out of place. Tony drove. Jesse rode shotgun, reorganizing microfiber cloths while gently misting his hair with a custom hydrating sealant. They pulled onto the highway. "So," Jesse said, adjusting his shades, "am I flex or fresh?" Tony smirked. "You literally glisten under fluorescent lights, kid." Jesse grinned. The van roared forward, ready for whatever slime, spirits, or sinister spillage awaited. And as Jesse touched up a single strand that dared to rebel, he whispered his new catchphrase to himself, smiling. "Stay silky, baby." It started like any other Tuesday. Sunshine glinted off the waxed hood of the Flex and Fresh van. Birds chirped. Tony bench-pressed a haunted sledgehammer behind the van. Jesse was oiling his hair with unicorn tear serum and humming Beyoncé. Then Jesse said it. "Tony, I think we should start taking commercial gigs." Tony froze mid-rep. The ground trembled. The sledgehammer thudded into the dirt. "Commercial?" he repeated, slowly turning, sweat glistening on his boulder-sized shoulders. "Like ads?" "Yeah," Jesse said, fiddling with his sleeve cuff. "TV spots, brand deals, we're iconic. People love us. Imagine it. Jesse, the face of supernatural cleanliness. You could sell protein powder to ghosts." Tony dropped the barbell. A crack split the pavement. "I didn't get into paranormal sanitation to do ads, Jesse. I did it to clean evil. With these." He flexed. A passing hawk crashed into a tree from intimidation. Jesse blinked. "Tony, you think I don't want to clean evil? I just think we could be cleaner and famous." Tony's voice dropped low. "It's always about your hair, isn't it?" Jesse stepped back like he'd been slapped. "Excuse me? You're always spritzing, posing, rapping. What about the work? The scrubbing, the mopping? What happened to elbow grease?" Jesse's hands trembled. "What happened to style, Tony? We're not just brute force, we're elegance. We're the finesse in Flex and Fresh." Tony stared at him. "Maybe that's the problem." The silence that followed was heavier than any haunted dumbbell Tony had ever lifted. "Maybe we should take a break," Jesse said, voice shaking. "Fine by me," Tony muttered. And just like that, Flex and Fresh was no more. 3 weeks later. The once unstoppable Tony sat alone in his cabin gym. The punching bag was untouched, his mop gathered dust in the corner, his muscles, still magnificent, had dulled slightly from disuse. He now lifted only in flashbacks. He stared into a mirror, whispering, "Mop, I don't even know who I am without him." Meanwhile, Jesse sat in a penthouse suite surrounded by unopened hair products and unopened feelings. His hair had lost its glow. He hadn't rapped in days. His last verse had been sad and rhymed moisturizer with "Why's her absence traumatizer?" He stared out the window, murmuring, "Tony would have never let me split end like this." He tried calling. Tony didn't pick up. He left voicemails. "Hey, I saw a haunted bowling alley. Thought of you." Then, "Remember when we waxed that ghost bus? That was wild." And finally, "I miss your mop. I miss your triceps. I miss us." Then came the day the world needed them again. A dimensional rift tore open above a laundromat in Cleveland. Dirty socks with teeth poured out. The sky turned yellow. The news begged, "Where is Flex and Fresh?" But Jesse, hair limp and heartbroken, just stared at the TV. And Tony just did push-ups with a sigh. Would they reunite? Would Tony lift again? Would Jesse's hair find its bounce? That is for the next chapter. But for now, the world spun slightly filthier, and somewhere in the dark, two broken bros cleaned. Nothing. Yet. Flex and Fresh, the reunion buffeting. It began with a scream from the moon. Not the sky, the actual moon. It screamed. A crack split its surface, releasing a psychic wave of mildew so foul that half of North America's dry cleaners caught fire simultaneously. Haunted garments rained from the sky, pants with vengeance, cursed cardigans, socks that never stopped screaming. The world turned to the only team that could fix it. But Flex was off the grid, and Fresh, lost in a sea of detangler and regret. Meanwhile, at Muscle Hermit Cabin Trademark, Tony sat on a rock the size of a small SUV, skipping kettlebells across a haunted pond. His once unstoppable arms had only 14 visible veins instead of 18. He had a beard now. It was angry. He hadn't touched a mop since the fight. But in the silence, he heard a whisper, a familiar voice. "Stay silky, baby." Tony looked up, standing at the edge of the woods. Hair glimmering again, coat longer than morally reasonable, high tops shining like vengeance in moonlight, was Jesse. "Tony," Jesse said, voice cracking, "I'm not fresh without you." Tony stood slowly. The earth trembled. A tree burst into respectful flames. "You came back?" Jesse nodded. "I tried solo rapping. It was all sad bars and cold showers. The bounce wasn't there. You're the lift, man." Tony's throat tightened. "I haven't flexed since you left. Not really. I tried to lift a spectral barbell last week and it just phased through me." They stared at each other. And then, without warning, Tony crushed a tree in half with a hug. Jesse dove in. Muscles and moose collided. Triceps met tears. The bond reforged, one protein-packed embrace at a time. 1 hour later, they suited up in silence. Tony's arms glistened with lemon-scented oil. Jesse's pompadour bounced with righteous fury. Their van's engine growled like a possessed lion. On the roof, a new motto painted in bold gold letters. "You got slime, we got time." The moon battle. They launched straight into orbit. That's right, into space. On the moon, a horde of vengeful laundry monsters, possessed by ancient dryer demons, waited. Jesse parachuted into battle with dual spray bottles. Tony rode a meteor and landed fists first. Clothes exploded. "Tony! Do I still have curl integrity?" Tony snapped a towel like a whip, decapitating a sock ghost. "Your bounce is transcendent." Together, they unleashed the Cleansequake Supreme, a shockwave of disinfectant so pure it erased 300 years of regret from a nearby satellite. The final boss, the Lint Queen, rose from a crater. "You boys smell like loyalty," she hissed, "and shampoo." "Wrong!" Jesse shouted. "We smell like revenge, baby!" Tony tackled her. Jesse dropped bars. "You thought we broke, but now we shine. Two gods reborn in lemon and pine. My hair's rebounced, our bonds remade. We wiped dimensions with a squeegee blade." The Lint Queen imploded from lyrical purity. Aftermath. Back on Earth, the people rejoiced. Tony carried Jesse down the van ramp like a freshly shampooed princess. Jesse, drained but glorious, rested his head on Tony's shoulder. "I knew you'd lift again," Jesse murmured. Tony grunted. "You're my forever curl." Jesse's eyes closed. He whispered, "Stay silky, baby," and fell asleep in the arms of a man whose mop could suplex a demon, and whose heart had finally flexed again. It started like every other Tuesday. Tony was bench pressing the industrial floor polisher outside the van. Jesse stood nearby, wearing an apron made of fake leather, shining his sunglasses using a single spritz of lavender mint Febreze. Then the phone rang. Jesse answered. "You got grime? We got time." The voice on the other end trembled. "It's the Gristle house." Tony stopped mid-rep. The polisher thudded to the ground. "The one that eats Roombas?" he asked. "The one that ate a priest," Jesse replied grimly. They looked at each other, said nothing. They both knew. This wasn't just another cleanup. This was when. They rolled up to the mansion at sunset. It looked like a house trying to unlive itself, tilted, covered in thick vines, and windows fogged from the inside out. A murder of crows watched them from the power lines. Tony cracked his knuckles. Jesse sprayed sea salt volumizer into his hair. They stepped inside together. The door closed behind them, without anyone touching it. The living room looked like a crime scene staged by a mad interior decorator. All the chairs faced away from the center of the room like they were hiding something. Jesse approached cautiously, his hair tensed into a perfect wave. Tony stomped forward and flexed. Every single cushion in the room exploded into dust. From beneath the largest couch, a low growl rose. A recliner launched itself into the air, jaws gaping, teeth made of shattered coasters. Tony caught it in mid-air with both arms. "Time to sit down," he growled, and suplexed the recliner into the floor so hard it shattered into ash and regret. They climbed the stairs, each step groaning like it remembered every bad thing that had ever happened in the house. At the top was a room labeled Thermal Decompression Sanctuary in glitter glue. It smelled like sadness and expired bath bombs. Inside, a spa tub filled with black sludge. A single rubber duck floated on top. It blinked, then spoke. "You'll never cleanse the stain beneath," it rasped. Jesse stepped forward. His pompadour grew sharper, pointillé. He said one word. "Rinse!" The duck hissed. Tentacles of goo erupted from the tub, flailing toward them. Tony ran straight in and bear-hugged the sludge. "Hot! Tub! Justice!" Jesse tossed in a mint eucalyptus bath bomb the size of a melon. It detonated in a green cloud of glowing foam. The sludge screamed, and then vanished down the drain. The duck popped. The room sparkled. Later, they split up. Tony went to investigate the attic of forgotten New Year's resolutions. Jesse headed to the master bedroom. But something felt off. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut. The walls oozed shampoo. The floor melted into mirrored glass. From the ceiling dropped a version of Jesse. But wrong. His reflection had greasier hair, crooked sunglasses, and a twisted smirk. "You think you're the only Jesse?" the reflection hissed. "I'm the one who never stopped styling. You abandoned the perm. You gave up the mousse." Jesse stared him down, then smiled. "I never stopped. I just went organic." He whipped out the comb. Lightning cracked outside, and then hair duel. Strand against strand, whip against wave, an aerial ballet of bangs, volume, and edge control serum. Finally, Jesse hit the final blow, the double spray spiral snap trademark. His reflection shattered like a cheap mirror at a flea market. The room returned to normal. He flicked his hair back. "Mess with the mousse. Get the juice." Meanwhile, in the attic, Tony found the real source of the corruption, a cursed Roomba floating 3 feet off the ground, spinning in slow circles. It had pentagrams drawn in peanut butter on its sensors. A low voice chanted from it. "Spin, spin, suck, and sin." Tony growled. "I don't clean with demons." He dropped into a squat so deep it cracked the foundation. Then he performed the sacred flexorcism pose. With each bicep curl, the house shook. With each tricep twitch, the Roomba sparked and shrieked. And then, boom! The Roomba exploded in a burst of glitter, sage, and lemon pledge. They met back in the living room. The house tried one last trick. The walls closed in. The ceiling dripped upside-down blood. The floor began chanting Latin phrases in pig Latin. But Tony and Jesse were ready. Tony flexed so hard his muscles played a national anthem. Jesse pulled the mic out of his back pocket. He spat the final cleaning rap. Scrubbing floors and crushing doom, demons flee when we enter the room. Mold can't hold, and grime gets wrecked. 'Cause Tony flexed and Jesse's hair checked. The house screamed. Then silence. Then sparkles. They'd done it. The Gristle house was clean. Epilogue. New enemies. Old mops. Back at their van, Tony wiped grime off his gloves with a protein bar. Jesse cleaned his sunglasses with silk. Their phone rang again. Jesse answered. "Yeah, this is Flex and Fresh. What's the job?" He paused, raised an eyebrow, then smiled. "Tony, you're not going to believe this. There's a possessed trampoline park in New Jersey." Tony cracked his knuckles. "Time to bounce." They fist bumped. The boom shattered a nearby mailbox. Cue theme music. It was 4:45 a.m. when the van's tires crunched into the gravel lot of Camp Crud Lake, deep in the rotting woods of Michigan. Fog clung to the trees like greasy sweat. The moon looked hungover. In the passenger seat, Jesse sipped from a titanium thermos labeled Hot Oil Hero and examined his reflection in his mirrored gold compact for the 19th time. "Tony, level with me," he said, brushing his already immaculate hair. "On a scale from 1 to divine wind-blown deity, how's the lift?" Tony didn't take his eyes off the path ahead. His biceps flexed as he downshifted the van, veins bulging like angry snakes. His t-shirt, if you could call that stringy remnant of cotton a shirt, was stretched to its limits across a chest sculpted like marble in madness. "Your hair looks like it could seduce thunder," Tony growled. Jesse exhaled in relief. "Good. I used the double bounce mousse, got it imported from Milan. It costs more than your truck." "I don't drive a truck," Tony said. "Exactly." They parked in front of a crooked old lodge. The sign out front read, "Camp Crud Lake. Open your heart. Bleed some slime." Lightning struck with no thunder. A single owl screamed and exploded. "Looks cozy," Tony muttered, stepping out of the van. As his boots hit the ground, the earth shuddered. His calf muscles flexed, somehow audible. He slung his mop over one shoulder like a warhammer. Jesse floated down behind him, glittering in his freshly steamed silk jumpsuit, hair bouncing with every step. Then the air changed. The fog hissed, and the camp came alive. Cabins groaned as if waking from a nightmare. Trees cracked like ribs. From the woods came a guttural chant, "Whack! Clan!" Tony spat on the ground. "Haunted! Mildewed! Probably cursed by fungus priests." Jesse stepped over a pile of cursed raccoon bones. "Then it's a job for Flex and Fresh." The first wave hit them in the main lodge. Living mop creatures, animated by dark soap magic, burst through the fireplace. Tony met them head-on, muscles blazing. He ripped a bench from the floor and wielded it like a bat, smashing through bristled abominations. Each swing caused a sonic boom and an echo of, "Oh yeah," to ring through the valley. Jesse spun through the chaos like a shampoo-powered ballerina. "Tony, my bang's got a little bounce fray. Am I still immaculate?" Tony punched a mop thing in half and said, "You look like a walking cologne ad. Focus." More monsters came, spore dogs, slime-slick bunk beds with teeth, a canoe that screamed in Latin. But the real trouble was still ahead. They reached the mess hall just as the air turned cold. A ring of glowing mushrooms pulsed in the center. Jesse stared, captivated. "Tony, they look delicious. like sage soufflés wearing rhinestones. Tony snarled, "Number, that's how the rot gets you." But Jesse was already popping one in his mouth. A beat of silence. Then, FWUMP. Jesse's pompadour collapsed. Limpio. Flat, slick with cursed dew. "No," Jesse whispered. "No, no, no, no. Tony, it's like seaweed. I have soft curls." Tony caught him as he fainted, whispering, "We'll get it back. But first, we survive." The Mold Father arrived just after dark. 8 feet tall, spongy, pulsing with dark shampoo energy. Mushrooms bloomed from its armpits. Its face was a scream of compost and cruelty. It roared, spewing toxic conditioner that tried to de-style everything it touched. Tony screamed, flexed so hard his sleeves disintegrated, and charged. He body-slammed the Mold Father into a brick grill pit. Grappling with muscles honed by lifting floor polishers and possessed dishwashers, Tony suplexed the creature, shattering the surrounding stone with a grunt like an avalanche. Jesse stumbled to his feet, hair soggy, pride shaken. "I can't fight like this," he whispered. "I've got conditioner trauma." Tony elbowed the Mold Father in the neck and shouted, "Then rap, Jesse! Your hair might be limp, but your bars still got bite." Jesse's eyes lit up. He adjusted his collar, stood tall, even if his hair didn't, and took center campfire stage. "Your style's a mess and your fungus is whack. I see more edge in a shampoo pack. You're a fungal fraud, a scalp disease. I'll wipe you out with my verbal Febreze." The Mold Father howled, launching a glob of mossy goo. Tony punched it mid-air and flexed his traps so hard a nearby tree burst into splinters. "I'm the bleach boss, the volume king. I make hair angels when I swing. My mousse is truth, my style is fate. I resurrect hairlines when I exfoliate." With every line, Jesse's hair began to rise, inch by glorious inch, blazing with supernatural sheen. Tony drop-kicked the Mold Father into a canoe, which Jesse doused in leave-in conditioner, lit on fire, and pushed into the cursed lake. It screamed all the way down. They limped back to the van. Tony's shirt was long gone. His abs shimmered in the moonlight, each one a tribute to a battle fought and won. Jesse's hair had never looked more glorious, voluminous, angelic, borderline divine. He could barely walk. Rapping had taken everything. Without a word, Tony scooped him up, bridal style. "Just rest," Tony said, muscles flexing with noble purpose. Jesse curled up against his chest. His breathing slowed. Then, eyes fluttering closed, he whispered into Tony's massive shoulder, "Stay silky, baby," and slept. The forest tamed, the camp clean, and the legend of Flex and Fresh, bigger, buffer, and more beautifully styled than ever.